This is the world of a mythical kingdom where only the strongest will survive, so the weak will always be defeated by the strong. The weak will never be able to look up. Blood, sweat, tears, fatigue and pain are Brother Yi-Yun's way of life. With his weak body, he was still learning swordsmanship, using his usual talent to study a high-level holy art. Yi-Yun's brother used a low status to challenge the elders. That is why now this person is strong and occupies a high position. Now no one looks down on him. However, there is still one person who is taller than him. This is his brother Yi-Yun. Once, Yi-Yun descended into hell all by himself, killed and beheaded hordes of demons. Then he ascended to heaven to kill the gods as well. By doing this, Yi-Yun wanted to show the meaning of his existence as the strongest. Compared to brother Yi-Yun, he considered himself to be just a tiny speck of dust. Here the strong defeats the weak, one rules the world, and this is the world of blood. This is a mythical kingdom. In the north of Jing, there are clans that are the best in cultivating the land. One of them is the Heavenly Sword Community. Many young people want to join the Heavenly Sword Community and become disciples to learn divine skills. This is the goal of their lives. But they don't even know whether they will live or die in this cruel world where the strong always eats the weak. The head of Liu Daolai shouted at the young guy Yi-Yun. Liu Daolai said that he ordered him to find 100 Huayu plants, and Yi-Yun still hasn't done it. Liu's supervisor Daolai said that if Yi-Yun could not fulfill his assignment, then he should not hope that he would receive experience resources this month. Yi-Yun replied that the time was not yet up to the end and, with a smile on his face, said that the leader Liu Daolai looked like a man who was forced to babysit a child. The leader Liu Daolai shouted that Yi-Yun did not dare to be so impertinent to him. He asked why Yi-Yun was talking to him like that. Then the leader Liu Dao could not stand it and picked up a whip. He decided to hit Yi-Yun with this whip. Yi-Yun said that everything looks like he's a masochist again and asked for it. Yi-Yun deftly dodged his supervisor's whip, occasionally informing Liu Daolai of his location. Suddenly, the leader of Liu Dao shouted again that Yi-Yun should do what he was asked at the time he was told and hit him with his whip again. This time Yi-Yun couldn't dodge and flew away, crashing into the wall. Head Liu Daolai looked at Yi-Yun and said that working-class students like Yi-Yun are at the lowest rung in the Heavenly Sword Society. No one cares about their lives. He then sternly added that he was giving Yi-Yun 6 hours to harvest the remaining 16 Huayu plants. Otherwise, he threatened to throw Yi-Yun into the Heavenly Beast Temple to feed them. Yi-Yun only grinned at this and said that he was too bony for the Heavenly Beasts, and added that the body of the leader Liu Dao looks like the heavenly animals will be able to digest it well. The leader Liu Daolai became very angry and shouted to his assistants that they should immediately beat the crap out of Yi-Yun. When Yi-Yun was taken away to carry out the punishment, he told the leader Liu Daolai that he had trained a lot, so now his body looks like iron. Yi-Yun was whipped, but he said it didn't hurt him. Yi-Yun was beaten again and again, but he still kept repeating that he didn't hurt a bit. But still, after some time, he began to feel pain. Soon, Yi-Yun's punishment finally ended and he was free. Yi-Yun stood there and thought how terrible it would be if some beautiful young girl saw him in such a state. He was recently hit in the face, and in general he does not look very good now. Then Yi-Yun got angry at the leader Liu Daolai, because this man, using his position as the head of the workers, takes away crystals of experience from other people and treats them all like animals for 3 whole years. Yi-Yun briefly thought about the fact that there was only a month left to wait before he could take the test and become a disciple. Yi-Yun dreamed that when he became a student, he would become a rich man and all the pretty girls would be crazy about him. Then everyone who treated him badly would obviously regret that they behaved like that. But first Yi-Yun will need to find Huayu plants. Yi-Yun thought that being in the Heavenly Beast clan meant greatly shortening his life. Before entering the Demon Beast Hollow that surrounds the Heavenly Sword Community, where various resources are mined, and where Yi-Yun had to get Huayu plants, he stopped and prayed for a while. Yi-Yun slowly and very hesitantly walked inside. The masters of the Heavenly Sword cast a spell to prevent the beasts from escaping from the hollow, and they also noted different levels of activity. Since it was too dark in the hollow, Yi-Yun used a light spell that can break the darkness in the hollow. The higher the level of a person, the greater the radius of light of his spell. Before that, Yi-Yun had used golden fire gas and was able to collect all the Huayu plants from the first tier, so it was completely unrealistic to find 18 more here. Then Yi-Yun thought for a while and decided that if he could sneak into Yu Dao's vault like a thief. But the problem was that if he was seen, people would immediately recognize him and his reputation would come to an end. Undecided, Yi-Yun clutched his head and began to think. Yi-Yun was very afraid that then all the cute girls would turn away from him and his dreams would not be destined to become reality. And then it will become food for the heavenly beasts, just as the leader Liu Daolai said. He has only one way out left. He must get to the second tier in any possible way. Yi-yun was well aware that he would be able to find Huayu plants only on the second tier, because there are a lot of them there. But the second tier is a forbidden zone for workers. In addition, Yi-yun's level is too small for the second tier, and if he meets a demonic beast with the third level, then his chances of survival will be quite small. Yi-yun didn't know what to do. Then he clenched his fists and decided that he was born to be a brave and strong student, so he would not be afraid of any dangers. Yi-yun understood that he should at least try to do everything possible to fulfill his dream. Yi-yun moved to the next tier in the Demon Beast Hollow. Yi-yun immediately noticed that the second tier was much darker than the first, and the light spell at the current level was as much use as a small burning candle. Yi-yun thought that the demonic beasts of the second tier of this alley must have noticed him a long time ago, so he needed to finish searching for Huayu plants as soon as possible and go back. While Yi-yun was thinking, he suddenly noticed a lot of Huayu plants and was glad, because they were right in front of him. Yi-yun was so pleased with Huayu's plants that he even fell to his knees, burst into tears, and, putting his hands together and putting them to his chest, began to shout enthusiastically that he was blessed and helped by his need. He decided that the gods probably finally heard him. Yi-yun shouted that with such luck, he would definitely be able to do anything now. When Yi-yun started collecting Huayu plants, he noticed that there were many more than the 18 he needed. Therefore, he was delighted, because it meant that he could just sell the remaining plants to Huayu and then he could become rich. Yi-yun was picking flowers and shouting with a smile that he had finally got out of his problems. He was thinking how cool he was now. Then Yi-yun suddenly remembered the leader Liu Daolai and tightly squeezed one of the flowers in his hands. He said that he would definitely take revenge on Liu Daolai, because now he probably can't even imagine that he has already completed his mission. But suddenly Yi-yun came to his senses and thought that Huayu plants are the favorite food of third-level beasts. So if there are so many of them here, it can only mean one thing, that there is clearly some demonic beast somewhere nearby. Suddenly Yi-yun heard some suspicious rustling and jumped off the seat. He began to look around nervously in search of the source of this noise. When Yi-yun turned around, he saw a third-level demonic beast, an ice serpent, in front of him. At that time, Yi-yun immediately thought that it was a third-level demonic beast. Its level was only one higher than Yi-yun's. Normally, he would be just a snack now, but Yi-yun decided to be brave and strong, so he was going to fight back against his enemy. Yi-yun was already almost full of confidence that he would win, but when he looked towards the demonic beast again, he saw that there were already two of them. He was obviously not ready for this. Yi-yun was very scared and shouted that he was giving up and it was time for him to dig his own grave. He said goodbye to his dream of a rich life with beautiful sweet girls and his dream of a happy and bright future. But, in fact, Yi-yun was not ready for death. When the snake attacked, he hit it with stones and said that he was not ready to give up to it just like that. Yi-yun said that he was still going to become a good student, so he just couldn't lose to some snake and die like that. Yi-yun added that this demonic monster would surely make quite a great soup and attacked the snake with a knife. But it wasn't as simple as he thought. Yi-yun couldn't pierce the snake's skin because it was completely covered with ice armor. Yi-yun was confused and didn't know what to do with it next. Meanwhile, the snake attacked Yi-yun again. He tried to fight back as best he could to protect himself, but the demonic beast was clearly superior to him in strength. The snake froze Yi-yun's blade and when it fell to the ground, it shattered into many small pieces. Then Yi-yun began to think that the demonic monster's icy breath was very strong, and considering that the snake also had ice armor, he knew perfectly well that he could not harm the monster in any way, unless he can find a weak spot in the monster's ice armor. Yi-yun carefully examined the monster's ice armor and found one weak spot in it. Then he finally decided to attack his opponent and rushed at the snake. With screams, he began to hit the demonic monster on the weak spot in the ice armor. Yi-yun recalled that it was very difficult for him to become a working-class scientist. But after 3 years of hard labor, it would not be in vain if he had a good enough day today. Yi-yun thought that he just couldn't die here and now. That's why he was able to defeat the demonic monster. Yi-yun stood up and breathed a sigh of relief because the snake is no more. Yi-yun was so exhausted from this hard battle that he had almost no energy left. But Yi-yun had completely forgotten about the second snake, and as soon as he looked forward, he saw it. The snake pounced on him and twisted him with its body so that he could not move at all. At that moment, Yi-yun cursed his life and wondered why it was so disgusting. Suddenly, Yi-yun looked at the sky and thought that this was not fair at all. Suddenly, Yi-yun saw a large brightly glowing ball in the sky. He couldn't figure out what it was and why it was moving straight towards him. He even thought it was his dying vision. A bright glowing ball hit Yi-yun right in the forehead and Yi-yun screamed in surprise and surprise. An old man was watching everything from afar. Yi-yun thought that something very interesting and important was clearly going to happen. He asked himself why such a powerful energy suddenly appeared out of the blue in his heavenly sword community. And Yun at this time did not understand what was happening and where he got to after being hit by the energy ball. He grabbed his head and started screaming loudly. Yun thought that maybe it was the afterlife and he died, but everything seemed too simple. Yun always thought that even heaven wouldn't be able to accept a guy as good as him. He was hovering among some clouds in the sky, when suddenly something started happening around him. He was surrounded by some kind of glowing fiery energy or force. Yun closed his eyes to avoid being blinded by the bright light. When he finally managed to open his eyes and not squint, he saw something in front of him that he had never expected to see. It was the Heavenly Golden Armored Legion. Yun thought that he had only heard about the Heavenly Legion from stories and legends. He could not bring himself to believe that the Legion actually exists. Yun was a little scared of being surrounded by so many soldiers. Did they really want to kill him? Did Yun somehow offend the gods? Yun thought that this definitely could not be. He knew perfectly well that the Heavenly Legion would kill him with one hair. Then Yun decided that the soldiers clearly did not care about him and they definitely did not come for his soul, but for someone else. Yun wondered for a moment who had the strength to summon such a large number of soldiers. Suddenly, Yun saw two people next to him. He immediately started asking them about who they were in general, and whether all these Heavenly Legion soldiers had come for them by chance. He advised them then to hurry up and fail without involving him in this situation, because he already has enough problems and he still needs to complete his task. Then Yun saw the glowing ball in front of his face again, but this time it was smaller. Yun couldn't figure out what it was and decided to check it out. He slowly and hesitantly reached out his hand to the glowing ball and touched it with one finger. The ball lit up even brighter and Yun did not understand what happened next. Yun woke up already lying on the grass. He didn't understand how he came back here again. There was a sign next to it saying that some shameless person was rejected even by hell. Yun thought about it and decided that it was probably written about him. Then he began to think about everything that had happened to him and noticed that it was quite light in the hollow, although he did not use a light spell. But then why is it so bright now? Yun walked around and saw a dead snake lying on the ground. He didn't remember what happened. Was it possible that everything that was happening was just his dream? Perhaps he was fighting with a snake and used up too much energy, so he fell asleep. But, for reasons unknown to Yun, he felt very rested and recovered now. In addition, even his energy for some reason increased several times. Yun was very happy about this unexpected turn of events. He couldn't believe that he was at the 3rd level, and his energy had increased tenfold. Is it possible that it has something to do with that strange black and white light ball? Yun grabbed his hand again, because he realized that he remembered everything very vaguely. Then he suddenly thought he knew the answer. Yun decided that the gods had finally shown mercy to him and endowed him with power. Yun fell to his knees and started thanking everyone. Now, Yun has decided that with this power, he will finally be able to take revenge on the hated leader Liu Dao Lai. Yun enthusiastically raised his fist and started shouting. Yun smiled and repeated to himself that because of that black and white ball of light that fell from the sky, he received incredible strength. He enthusiastically looked at the sky and asked for more strength, but someone threw hot tofu at him. In the afternoon, the head of Liu Dao Lai was outside. Lately, he has started sneezing a lot, so one of the guys who were standing next to him asked if it was cold for the leader Liu Dao and advised him to dress warmly. Another guy said that Liu Dao's supervisor probably just worked too hard, so he should take better care of himself and his health. The head of Liu Dao Lai was greatly offended by such words, and he began to shout that some small bugs were all talking behind his back. The head of Liu Dao coughed a little and covered his mouth with his hand, said that these students should listen to him carefully. He decided that he simply had to explain to them how everything worked. The head of Liu Dao said that the students think too highly of themselves just because they came to the test to get into the Heavenly Sword clan. But Liu Dao Lai said that ordinary students like them here are being drained of just garbage. Then he added cheerfully that he was the boss here and when he said to do something, they should definitely do it without any stupid questions. Liu Dao Lai added that every month the students would be given crystals and they would have to give half of them to him. One of the students wanted to object to the head of Liu Dao Lai, saying that he would certainly report his illegal actions to the teaching team. But the leader Liu Dao only laughed in response to this. He asked if this disciple knew who he dared to talk to like that now. Then the leader Liu Dao Lai ordered the boy to be thrown into the Temple of Heavenly Rhythm. When a student was tied up by two men, he shouted that crystals were their way to raise their level, and without them they simply would not be able to pass the exam, so they also really need these crystals. He was taken to the Temple of Heavenly Rhythm, and he continued to shout that the actions of the leader Liu Dao were unfair to the students. At that moment, Yi-Yun appeared and said that this boy was right. Yi-Yun called the leader Liu Dao fat and said that he should have gone to the Heavenly Rhythm Temple and looked at all his fat. Yi-Yun then added that Chief Liu Dao was just trash. The head of Liu Dao Lai was in shock. He did not quite understand what was happening now and how he should react to it. The two guys who were standing next to the leader, Liu Dao Lai, were very surprised by Yi-Yun's appearance. They said that they had heard that he had accidentally entered the second-level Demon Valley, so everyone thought that he had already died. Head Liu Dao glared at Yi-Yun and said that he had done a great job, and then asked how he dared to come back here at all. Yi-Yun asked why he should be afraid to come back. He hadn't made any mistake. The leader Liu Dao Lai looked at Yi-Yun with even more anger than before and shouted that he had ordered Yi-Yun to find Huayu grass, and he had disappeared for 3 days and would be severely punished for it. Yi-Yun only laughed and humorously said that the leader Liu Dao could punish him by eating his food for these 3 days, and he would even gladly accept this punishment. Then the leader Liu Dao got angry again and ordered to immediately grab Yi-Yun and throw Yi-Yun and the other boy into the Heavenly Beast Temple. The guys wanted to grab Yi-Yun, and he said that they did not dare to touch him, although later he thought that it was even very good, because now he would be able to test his skills on them. Yi-Yun quickly coped with his rivals, scattering them in different directions. Of course, the leader Liu Dao Lai was unhappy with this. He began to get indignant and asked how Yi-Yun dared to hit his servants, and then asked if he was tired of living since he was behaving like this. But Yi-Yun only jokingly apologized to him, laughed and scratched his head, and then added that he simply sent Liu Dao Lai's minions overboard. After finishing the fight, Yi-Yun approached the boy who was indignant at the insolence of the leader Liu Dao, and praised him, saying that this boy is very brave. Yi-Yun then asked the boy if he was alright. The boy told him that he was fine and he was fine. The head of Liu Dao stood and looked at how Yi-Yun was talking to the boy and shouted that Yi-Yun could not just ignore his words. Yi-Yun turned around and looked at the leader Liu Dao and said that he was paying attention. Then Yi-Yun's face darkened and he said that he would return to leader Liu Dao all the gratitude he had given him before. The leader Liu Dao only laughed in response, saying that his level is 4 times higher than Yi-Yun's, and he foolishly believes that he can defeat him. Yi-Yun disagreed with the similar words of the leader Liu Dao and said that he was still a human being, so it would not be so difficult to defeat him. Then Yi-Yun turned around, looked at the other students and told them to look carefully at how he could defeat the leader Liu Dao Lai now. But the other students did not believe in Yi-Yun's victory, and told him to rest in peace, that they would miss him and that if he suddenly needed something, he could always come to them in their dreams and ask for anything. Yi-Yun got angry and asked why they didn't believe in him. Leader Liu Dao smiled and said that even the 3 scum didn't believe in Yi-Yun's strength. He then said that he would guide Yi-Yun to the path of death and decided to attack him with a mountain split. Yi-Yun was slightly surprised, but still managed to dodge the blow of the leader Liu Dao. For a moment, Yi-Yun thought that if the leader Liu Dao had hit him in the territory of Lenzeng, he would probably have been defeated. Then Yi-Yun decided to annoy the head of Liu Dao a little and said that he believed that the head of Liu Dao was capable of much more, because it was easier to evade such a blow as now. Yi-Yun then decided to attack the leader Liu Dao in return and use the Forest Tiger Strike. But the leader Liu Dao managed to meet the blow with his fist and said that Yi-Yun would not be able to use such a blow in a battle with him, because his tiger would then be no bigger than an ordinary cat. But everything turned out to be completely different from what the leader Liu Dao expected. The tiger turned out to be huge, and the leader Liu was afraid of him. The leader Liu Dao could not repel the blow of this tiger in any way, and flew away a huge distance. Yi-Yun walked up to Chief Liu, looked down at him and said he wouldn't kill him now just because he was a young master. The leader Liu Dao Lai came to his senses near some tree. He couldn't figure out where he was or how he got here. Suddenly, someone behind him called his name. It was his old acquaintance, Xiao Hua. Liu's supervisor Dao Lai asked Xiao Hua how she ended up here. The girl said that many years had passed and asked why Liu Dao Lai decided to return to her right now, when she was already married and it was too late to fix something. Liu Dao Lai said that Xiao Hua shouldn't worry about such things. He said that he could just kill her husband and then they could finally be together. But when Xiao Hua turned around, for some reason she had Yi-Yun's face. Liu's supervisor Dao Lai was very scared and woke up from a nightmare, shouting Xiao Hua's name and asking with horror why Xiao Hua suddenly became so similar to Yi-Yun. The attendants immediately ran up to the leader Liu Dao and began to ask how he was feeling and if everything was fine with him. Yi-Yun proudly stood not far from the leader Liu Dao Lai and said that he was very surprised that the leader woke up, because he had been exhausted for about half a day, so Yi-Yun already thought that the leader Liu Dao would not wake up anymore. The other disciples at this time still continued to admire the fact that Yi-Yun was able to defeat Master Liu Dao. They could not bring themselves to believe it in any way. The leader Liu Dao looked at Yi-Yun and said that he could not even imagine that Yi-Yun was actually only hiding his true strength. Then Yi-Yun replied to the leader Liu Dao that his strength was not at all like that of ordinary children and it could not be understood so simply. Yi-Yun then added that he promised the leader Liu Dao Lai that if the head of the squirrel took someone else's crystals again, he would not wake up again. The leader Liu Dao only shook his head as a sign of understanding Yi-Yun's words. Then Yi-Yun shouted for the leader Liu Dao and his friends to get out of here as soon as possible. The acolytes led the leader Liu Dao away by the arms, and he quietly promised himself that he would make Yi-Yun suffer and tear his body into thousands of small pieces. Yi-Yun stayed with the other students. The boy he had saved came up to him again and told him that Yi-Yun was definitely the best person, because he had saved them all from Liu Dao Lai today. Yi-Yun only laughed and lightly patted the boy on the head, and then added that as long as he was here, next to them, no one would ever dare to offend them again. The other students also started thanking Yi-Yun. They said it was a pity that such good people as Yi-Yun did not live long. They said they would always remember what Yi-Yun did for them. Yi-Yun turned around and looked at them. One of the students said that Liu's supervisor Dao Lai would never be able to forgive Yi-Yun after what he did to him today. Another student added that Yi-Yun should not forget that all the Liu Dao Lai brothers are official students. Yi-Yun understood that it really wasn't that simple, because Liu Dao Lai's strength couldn't be compared to that of an ordinary disciple. Yi-Yun was not completely confident that he would be able to win this difficult battle with Liu Dao Lai. But then Yi-Yun smiled insidiously at the fact that Liu Dao Lai really would never forgive him for his actions today. Yi-Yun thought that if someone tried to attack him, they would all be lying on the ground and begging him to spare them. Then Yi-Yun realized that it was time for him to go and told everyone that he was leaving. As Yi-Yun walked, he scratched his head and thought that he had probably bragged too much about his strength today. Finally, Yi-Yun came home and opened the door and entered. He was so tired that he immediately lay down on the bed and breathed a sigh of relief. Yi-Yun was lying on the bed and thought that now his level is higher than that of an ordinary student. He did not quite understand what he would need to do with it. Yi-Yun couldn't stop thinking and was constantly turning from one side to the other. Then he lay on his back and remembered that he had lost a lot of spiritual power in the battle with Liu Dao Lai. Yi-Yun couldn't understand why his spiritual power had recovered so quickly. Suddenly, he stood up abruptly and thought that it was quite possible that that glowing ball not only increased his spiritual power, but also dramatically accelerated his development. Then Yi-Yun sat down to meditate on the bed. Yi-Yun thought about the fact that low-grade crystals contain very little spiritual power. Their absorption can increase spiritual power, the main source of a student to prepare for students. Yi-Yun continued to hold the crystal he took out from under his pillow and meditate. Then, after a certain amount of time, Yi-Yun opened his eyes again. The crystal has completely turned into dust, which can only mean one thing: its spiritual power has been completely absorbed. Yi-Yun knew very well that it usually takes at least 2 days for people with a low level to absorb spiritual power from crystals. It is impossible to absorb crystals so quickly, so he did it. Yi-Yun realized that his level had probably increased tenfold. Then he decided that if he wanted to further increase his spiritual power, he needed to find as many of these crystals as possible. Yi-Yun decided to find the place where the head of Liu Dao Lai lives to take all his crystals for himself. Terrifying screams could be heard from the house where the leader Liu Dao Lai lived. The attendants helped the leader Liu Dao Lai to treat his injuries and asked him to be patient a little longer. But the leader Liu Dao just kept shouting that they were idiots and they should be more careful. The leader Liu Dao was lying on his stomach and cursing Yi-Yun for what he had done to him. He said he'd skin him alive. Suddenly, the head of Liu Dao heard a familiar voice outside the door. It was Yi-Yun's voice saying that the skin was just the most delicious part and asking why fat Liu Dao Lai was so bad at food. Liu Dao Lai's supervisor got scared and demanded that no one let Yi-Yun into his room. He sealed the door with his power and sent a bird to notify one of his students about the situation. At this time, Yi-Yun easily broke down the door to the room of the head of Liu Dao and said that it was impossible to stop him with such an insignificant barrier. Head Liu began to get indignant and asked what Yi-Yun wanted to achieve in this way. Yi-Yun walked over, grabbed the head of Liu Dao by the collar and angrily said that he wanted to force the head of Liu Dao to give him all his crystals back. The leader Liu Dao asked what would happen to him if he didn't return the crystals to Yi-Yun. Yi-Yun did not answer Liu Dao Lai's question, but only grabbed him by the wound so that the leader began to scream in pain. Yi-Yun said that he would do this again and again so that Chief Liu could feel the pain in full. Supervisor Liu decided to agree and asked how many crystals Yi-Yun wanted to get. Then Yi-Yun said that he had several thousand of them, Each of them earned about 10 crystals a month, from which the head of Liu Dao Lai took half. It turns out that the head of Liu Dao scored a pretty decent amount this year. Therefore, Yi Yun decided that he would not ask for little and asked for 50,000 crystals. The head of Liu Dao and his minions were completely shocked by such a sum. The head of Liu began to be indignant and shout that Yi Yun had completely lost his mind, since he was asking him for 50,000 powerful crystals. Chief Liu thought it was ridiculous. Yi Yun asked if this was a lot, considering the fact that the head of Liu Dao had taken much more crystals over the years. It turns out that Yi Yun also gave him a discount. Then the leader Liu Dao Lai began to cry and say that most of those crystals that he took away from others went to the higher ones. Liu Dao Lai said that he was just an ordinary peasant who didn't understand anything about it at all. Yi Yun thought that this was just outrageous and asked how many crystals Liu Dao Lai had now. Liu Dao's supervisor Lai gave Yi a bag and said he could take it. All his family's treasures were there. The head of Liu Dao said that he had nothing else. Yi Yun opened the bag and looked at what was inside it. There, he saw about 100 upper-class crystals, 10 middle-class crystals. But Yi Yun decided not to show his admiration. He shouted that the leader Liu Dao Lai calls himself the boss, but in fact just a beggar. He said that Liu Dao Lai should be very ashamed of himself. He was leaving and said that the head of Liu Dao Lai would now be in his debt, and he would return at the end of the month for the next batch. When Yi Yun left, he thought to himself that since he was able to get so many crystals for the first time, it is likely that he just has the talent to be a thief. Liu Dao's supervisor suddenly stopped Yi Yun and offered him a deal. He said that since Yi Yun is so strong, then he can join him and then they can divide the crystals they receive among themselves every month. But Yi Yun hit Liu Dao Lai on his wound, which caused Liu's supervisor to scream again. Yi Yun said that Liu Dao Lai's supervisor would never be able to bribe him, because he is the most honest partner of virtue and justice. He would never help people like Liu Dao Lai for anything. When Yi Yun left, he said that no matter what, he would become a disciple, increase the level of his strength and do everything possible to destroy all evil spirits in the world. Yi Yun cheerfully thought that now he was finally rich and would even be able to take some girl as his assistant. And the leader Liu Dao was angry at this time and thought that Yi Yun would not be able to achieve anything with such pride. On the mountain of Tianju Peak at this time stood the disciple of the leader Liu Dao Lai, to whom he had previously sent his bird. He stood there and thought that Liu Dao Lai had some problems again and he wanted his disciple to kill someone again. Yi Yun walked around his room and thought that Liu Dao Lai was serious when he called his Shixing. So now Yi Yun is in trouble. Yi Yun thought that they would catch him and put him up for auction. But he has to decide his own fate, so he still has a chance. Yi Yun began to come up with a plan of action. He looked at the crystals and thought that he urgently needed to increase the potential of his body, and then he would be able to stand up and battle against his enemy. But 3 years later, after joining the Tianjian clan, he had only reached the 3rd level. Yi Yun thought that he was kind of talented enough with his progress, but he still needed some time to reach the 4th level. There are 7 levels in total. Increasing the potential of the body is the very first level. The main task is to cleanse the body to the purest and best condition. The 2nd level is blood purification. The 3rd is cleansing to the marrow of the bones. The 4th is cleansing the organs. The 5th is rhythmic breathing. The 6th is sensitivity. And the last, 7th level is awareness of Kai. Yi Yun thought that he could take into account all his previous mistakes and put everything on the line. Yi Yun sat down to meditate again. He called for Reiki to appear to him, a system of natural healing of a person through the transfer of energy through the hands. Yi Yun sat and tried to absorb the energy with his internal organs. A huge amount of energy entered Yi Yun's body and seeped into his internal organs. The majestic power of Reiki spread throughout his body. The toxins in Yi Yun's organs were forced out. His energy increased tenfold. Yi Yun suddenly opened his eyes, and they shone with a bright light. He was able to do it. He finally completed the procedure. He tried to hit the wall and made a hole in it. Yi Yun was very happy that he was really able to do this. When Yi Yun absorbed the energy of the 50 crystals, his speed radically increased and he was finally able to reach the 4th level. Yi Yun rejoiced and thought that, undoubtedly, he was just a genius. But suddenly his head started to hurt a lot. Yi Yun was very scared and thought that it might be some side effect of his strength. Yi Yun suddenly saw through a hole in the wall 2 people from his dream about the ball. Suddenly, they disappeared into thin air again. Yi Yun shouted at them not to leave, but then decided that it was only his imagination. But then Yi Yun heard someone near his house and asked if this person had seen an inscription on the door saying that no one was at home. The man responded, and Yi-yun thought that the man's voice was very familiar. It was Shenmo, the same boy that Yi-yun had recently rescued from Liu Daolai's supervisor. Shenmo was lying littered with fragments of stones from the wall that Yi-yun had demolished, and asked to be released, as it was very difficult for him to breathe. Yi-yun shouted that no one could die here and rushed to rescue the guy covered with stones. Using the mole technique, Yi-yun was able to free Shenmo and asked him what he was doing here and why he was covered with stones. Shenmo replied that he was just standing near Yi-yun's house and suddenly the wall collapsed and covered him. Shenmo asked what happened to Yi-yun's house. Yi-yun awkwardly scratched his head and said that it probably happened because the building still could not be repaired. It was probably just an accident. He then said that it didn't matter at all and asked why Shenmo was looking for him. Shenmo replied that he needed to escape from here as soon as possible, because Liu Daolai had brought his Shikshin here and he was already following Yi-yun. Suddenly, screams were heard that Yi-yun would definitely die today. Shenmo said that probably Liu Daolai and his Shikshin are already here. Shenmo grabbed Yi-yun's hand and wanted to take him as far away from here as possible. But it was too late since they had come. Yi-yun wasn't afraid. He just looked towards the enemies with a smirk and said that they had come just in time. Liu Daolai's supervisor said that Yi-yun clearly has courage since he is still here and has not run away, even though Liu Daolai brought his Shikshin to him. Yi-yun started looking around and asking where this Shikshin was. He asked if he was invisible by chance. Suddenly, Yi-yun heard someone saying that it wouldn't be much fun to kill a weak little boy. Yi-yun looked around once more and asked who was talking. The guy said hello and said his name was Liu Yu. Liu Yu stood on the roof of Yi-yun's house and said that Yi-yun should definitely remember his name, because this beautiful name would be the last thing Yi-yun would hear in his life. Liu Yu stood on the roof and smiled as he looked at Yi-yun. One of the people said that he had heard about how it was said that some external disciple was looking for problems with Yi-yun. Everyone started to discuss this topic violently and ran to Yi-yun's house. Liu Yu told Yi-yun to give him the spirit stone, and then broke his legs. He added that since he is too lazy to deal with everything today, he may even leave Yi-yun alive. But Yi-yun was not going to give up so easily. He said that, unfortunately, he did not quite understand the language of the feeble-minded, and Shenmo added that they would obviously need an interpreter. Then Liu Yu said that the pig would always remain a pig anyway and he was simply wasting his kindness on Yi-yun. Liu Yu decided to attack and Yi-yun told Shenmo to step aside. Liu Yu instantly tied up Yi-yun with some kind of rope, while Shenmo stood aside and did not know what to do or how to help Yi-yun. Liu Yu then said that it was all too tiring for him, so he wanted to take a break. He said that he had left Yi-yun to Liu Daolai's supervisor and he could do whatever he wanted with him. Liu Daolai thanked Liu Yu. Then Liu's supervisor Daolai laughed and said that Yi-yun probably had no idea that retribution would overtake him so soon. Liu Daolai said that now Yi-yun will answer to him for everything he did to him. But Yi-yun was clearly against such a development. He said that Liu Daolai should ask him about it first and broke the rope that Liu Yu had bound him with. Liu Daolai's supervisor didn't understand how this happened, but before he knew it, Yi-yun had already walked up to him and kicked him. Liu Daolai fell to the ground. All the students started teasing Liu Daolai and laughing at him. But Yi-yun told them to just get him out of here, otherwise they would spoil karma if the leader Liu Daolai died on his territory. At that moment, Liu Yu returned. He found it quite interesting that Yi-yun was able to free himself from his shackles. Liu Yu then said that they would probably all be alive if Liu Daolai were in his place right now, but since it's him, he won't just leave them unpunished and they should all die no matter what. Liu Yu decided to attack, flew closer and closer to Yi-yun. Liu Yu decided to use the smashing palm strike. Yi-yun was surprised and asked if this was all that Liu Yu was capable of, because the last time the head of Liu Daolai used a similar technique against Yi-yun, he could not even prick him with it. But Liu Yu was completely confident in himself and his abilities. He called Yi-yun an uncultured pig and said that because he is an external disciple, the strength in his palm is 10 times greater than the strength of trash like Yi-yun. Suddenly there was a collision. Absolutely nothing was visible. Only tons of dust were flying through the air and polluting it. The students who were watching all this spectacle immediately thought that Yi-yun was probably already dead. Someone said that Yi-yun probably doesn't know himself what is good for him and what is bad, since he is trying to resist an external disciple. Shenmo was the only one who still believed in Yi-yun's powers. He continued to call him without interruption, calling him Big Brother. After a while, Liu Yu appeared from a huge cloud of dust. He looked with triumph and glee at the remaining disciples and told them that they should never let their heads understand that they were chosen from tens of thousands of other people, because only one person out of 1,000 servant disciples would have the opportunity to study magical arts, enjoy spiritual medicine, and prolong their life as an external student. Liu Yu then laughed angrily and added that the remaining students were just pigs and dogs, so it would be better for them if they listened to him and did what he told them. Suddenly, the students heard a voice coming from the dust, and which Liu Yu probably didn't hear at all. It was Yi Yun's voice saying that if Liu Yu wanted to rebel with his insignificant strength, then it was just like a funny joke. All the students looked down carefully. But since Liu Yu didn't hear Yi Yun, he kept saying that now everyone would be where they were supposed to be, in their rightful place. Liu Yu said that since these pathetic students can't even be a dog, they will just become a good fertilizer. And then suddenly Liu Yu finally heard the voice of Yi Yun, who said that he liked being a bull more and used the bullhorn spell. Liu Yu was shocked and even a little scared that Yi Yun still hadn't died. Yi Yun flew out of the dust cloud and said that only a dirty animal would treat others as if they were animals too. Yi Yun then added that Liu Yu definitely has no right to treat others like that. Liu Yu looked at his enemy with contempt and said that he should run away from here as soon as possible. In his place, any adequate person would do so. Liu Yu then asked if Yi Yun would really dare to use this useless martial art. But Yi Yun knew how to surprise his opponent and therefore said that he completely forgot to tell Liu Yu that just 5 minutes ago he broke through the 3rd stage of bone marrow purification, and now he is currently in the 4th stage of organ purification. Liu Yu was completely horrified. He did not understand how such a thing was even possible. Then Yi Yun and Liu Yu engaged in an equal battle. The other students watched this battle with bated breath and were surprised that Liu Yu and Yi Yun are now completely equal. Liu Yu was already very tired after the battle. He did not understand why there was a draw between them now, because not a single servant disciple was not equal with an external disciple in battle. The battle finally ended and Shenmue immediately ran up to his older brother and began to talk with admiration about how great Yi Yun was. Yi Yun awkwardly scratched his head again and laughed and said that there was nothing amazing about it at all. He was just lucky that he met such a terrible external disciple like Liu Yu. At this time, Liu Yu was angrily thinking about how the disciple servant managed to reach the 4th stage of organ purification so quickly. Although Liu Yu admitted that Yi Yun was quite talented, he still thought that Yi Yun was too bad. Liu Yu then told the disciples that even if they had a higher realm than now, they would still only be able to cultivate an ordinary martial art. He said that they would never be able to match the magic art of the outer disciples. Liu Yu then channeled his energy to strike and added that even if it was the worst magic art of the 9th grade, it would still be able to defeat all these pitiful students with ease. Liu Yu released the bloody killing palm spell and decided to see how Yi Yun could handle it. But it wasn't as simple as Yi Yun initially thought. There was no way he could get out of Liu Yu's bloody grip, and he couldn't even move at all. Suddenly there was a loud explosion. Yi Yun grabbed his head, which suddenly started to hurt very much. Liu Yu stood and laughed, watching the helplessness of his enemy. He said that the blood would strike right into Yi Yun's heart and consume his soul bit by bit. Then he would experience unbearable pain. Liu Yu then added that compared to this unbearable pain, death would be just a gift for Yi Yun. And considering the fact that Yi Yun treated Liu Yu so disrespectfully, he fully deserved it. Liu Yu was very happy that the enhanced power would completely consume Yi Yun's soul. But suddenly Yi Yun screamed even louder and used some kind of spell. Liu Yu was very surprised and asked what kind of spell it was, to which Yi Yun replied to him that it was something that could control him. Yi Yun quickly got up, ran to Liu Yu and stuck something into him. Liu Yu started spitting blood, and Yi Yun said that Liu Yu should stop using all sorts of dirty tricks, otherwise how could he even call himself a disciple? Liu Yu was lying on the ground and was angry at his enemy. Yi Yun told Liu Yu to call him Brother Yi Yun, and if he didn't, Yi Yun promised to beat him to death. Yi Yun grabbed Liu Yu lying on the ground and swung his fist at him. But Liu Yu only said that a dog will always remain a dog, just like a pig will always be a pig. Yi Yun got very angry after such words of Liu Yu. He asked how Liu Yu dares to say such things at all, because even if a person, it doesn't mean that you can't stink like a real animal. Yi Yun then added that now, starting this year, Liu Yu will be able to participate in the Kingdoming Festival. Liu Daolai, the leader, ran behind Yi and shouted that Yi Yun should not kill Liu Yu. Yi Yun turned around at the screams and said that as he expected, the leader Liu Daolai could withstand much more beatings and asked if he did not want to be beaten again by accident. Then Liu Daolai began to persuade Yi Yun not to kill Liu Yu, explaining that he should think carefully about everything first, because the Tianjian sect has established such a rule that whoever kills a disciple is sentenced to death. He said that Yi Yun should not give up his life because of Liu Yu. My own life. These words made Yi Yun very angry, and he said that he understood everything perfectly well and did not intend to kill Liu Yu, but only wanted to scare him properly. Yi Yun then added that he wanted Liu Yu to suffer an even worse fate than death and kicked him in the face. Yi Yun then asked Liu Yu how he felt after being completely trampled by the one he called pigs and a dog. All the students were watching this scene, waiting to see what would happen next. The head of Liu Daolai said that this was already more than enough, because Yi Yun had probably already released all his anger. He said that no one would know that Yi Yun was here and his minions promised to confirm it. Then Yi Yun asked what about the injuries of the head Liu Daolai, and the head said that his injuries were due to an injury in a friendly match. Then Yi Yun said with a satisfied smile that it was not at all surprising that Liu Daolai's supervisor was a supervisor, and since he was smart enough, Yi Yun decided that he could forgive Liu Yu this time. Then Yi Yun, addressing Liu Yu, said that today he was spared from death and said that he should always remember him with a grateful heart and not forget to send him gifts for all festivals and holidays. And as soon as Yi Yun released Liu Yu, Liu Daolai's supervisor immediately ran up to him and started asking if he was okay. When Yi Yun left, he told Liu Daolai to find a doctor for Liu Yu to check if he had any injuries after he was scared to death. But unexpectedly for everyone, something bright flew into the sky. The head of Liu Dao asked Liu Yu what it was, and Liu Yu looked at Yi Yun and said that Yi Yun should know exactly what it was. Yi Yun turned around, looked up and realized that Liu Yu had sent a signal to Jing Lu Dian. All the students were surprised and did not know what would happen next. Yi Yun got very angry at Liu Yu and walked towards him with a threatening look. All the students immediately began to run away, because they did not want to interfere in such matters. There was only one Shenmo left. He asked Yi Yun what Jing Lu Dian was. Yi Yun remembered that Shenmo had only been here since last year, so he tried to explain to him that Jing Lu Dian is a department that observes the rules of the Tan Giant sect and punishes all violators of order very strictly. Then Shenmo was delighted and said that it was just fine, because now they would be able to complain about what Liu Daolai had done. But Yi Yun told him that everything was not as simple as he naively believes. Yi Yun told Shenmo that Jing Lu Dian is an accomplice of the leader Liu Daolai, just like Liu Yu and Liu Daolai. Jing Lu Dian are rotten. Liu Yu stood with the leader Liu Daolai and shouted with laughter that even if Yi Yun humiliates someone, he will still not live, and will not be able to tell his story. One day he will just die and no one will care about the death of some dog at all. Then Yi Yun got really angry. He remembered that he had come to the Tan Giant sect just to practice magic arts, but the two of them bullied him all the time. Now Yi Yun has firmly decided that he will no longer feel sorry for these scum and will just kill them all. Liu Yu decided to attack Yi Yun again while he had the chance, and he used the blood monster power spell, saying that no one could defeat his blood monster. Yi Yun told him that he was just going to call someone to help him in that case. Liu Yu was very surprised and asked who Yi Yun was going to call for help. At that moment, an ambulance drove up. They just didn't have enough blood, so they decided to quickly catch this blood monster. Yi Yun quickly flew into the air and, shouting that he was going to kill everyone, rushed to the leader Liu Daolai and Liu Yu. The head of Liu Dao was very scared and, in fear, clutching at his older brother Liu Yu, began to ask him to do something and somehow stop Yi Yun. But Liu Yu clearly did not like it, and he demanded that the leader Liu Daolai detach himself from him. The enraged Yi Yun was suddenly grabbed by his jacket and pulled back. Yi Yun furiously asked who dared to try to stop him. Turning around, Yi Yun saw Shenmo, who asked him to stop. Shenmo said that Yi Yun should calm down and not give Jing Lu Dian's people a chance to punish him. But Yi Yun didn't want to stop. He said that Shenmo should stop being so naive, because Jing Lu Dian's people wouldn't even bother to even listen to their explanations. But Shenmo was still trying to dissuade his brother from such actions, because he understood perfectly well that if Yi Yun killed the leader Liu Daolai and Liu Yu, he would be the only one to blame for this situation, and it would be much more difficult to explain or prove something. While they were talking, Liu Yu decided to sneak attack Yi Yun from behind. He had already directed his punch, but Shenmo managed to notice and shout to Yi Yun that he should turn around. Yi Yun turned around abruptly, and the punch that was originally intended for him hit Shenmo directly. Shenmo fell and lost consciousness. Yi Yun picked him up and asked if he was okay, but Shenmo couldn't answer him right now. Then Yi Yun got even angrier. He looked at his enemies and advised them to hope that everything would be fine with Shenmo. Yi Yun carefully examined Shenmo and made sure that his vital organs were not touched, so he probably just fainted. Yi Yun stood up and looked at Liu Yu with anger. He asked how Liu Yu dared to make an attempt on his life. Liu Yu started shouting that he had missed just the perfect moment, and the leader Liu Daolai asked Liu Yu why he was trying to do this. Yi Yun said that now he definitely did not leave Liu Yu just unpunished, because he really is just a disgusting person. Then Liu Yu suddenly grabbed the leader Liu Daolai by the collar and said that he had always served him well, and now it was time for Liu Daolai to pay back. The leader Liu Dao was very surprised by his brother's similar act. He asked what Liu Yu was going to do, and then tried to break away. But Liu Yu pushed him right at Yi Yun's feet. Yi Yun looked at the leader Liu Dao Lai and said that he mistakenly believed that all the disciples from the clan were heroes, and Liu Dao Lai was so afraid of dying. Yi Yun hit Liu Dao Lai and said that he would now check if Chief Liu could repel his blow this time. Then Yi Yun decided to attack Liu Yu, and Liu Yu shouted that Yi Yun forced him to do it and used a ghost weapon, so Yi Yun could not hit him. Liu Yu stood and held a sword in his hands with a smile on his face, saying that the Tianjian clan is famous for its swords. Despite the fact that the sword that Liu Yu held in his hands was of rather poor quality, Liu Yu assured that this sword would be enough to crush Yi Yun. Liu Yu glared at his enemy and said that if Yi Yun knelt before him and begged for his forgiveness, he might let him live. But Yi Yun wasn't the least bit scared. He said that Liu Yu shouldn't take him for a fool, and then asked if it was true that Liu Yu was still able to control this weapon. Liu Yu looked at Yi Yun in surprise. He knew perfectly well that he had spent all his strength in the fight with Yi Yun, but he did not guess that Yi Yun would also understand everything. Yi Yun said that Liu Yu treats all the students like dogs and pigs, so he must definitely answer for looking down on other people. And Yi Yun attacked his opponent again. Liu Yu looked at Yi Yun and wondered if he was really destined to die at the hands of some novice. He was obviously not ready for this, so he decided to attack the enemy in response. They ran at each other screaming and finally met. Yi Yun hit Liu Yu and asked how she dared to attack him at all. Liu Yu wondered why Yi Yun was moving so fast and he just didn't have enough time to deflect the blows. Then Yi Yun hit Liu Yu again and cut off his hand. He bled. It was very bad for him. Liu Yu fell to the ground and sadly looked at his shoulder without a hand, squeezing the wound with his other hand to stop the blood. Yi Yun walked up to him and looked down at him and said that Liu Yu definitely deserved all this for what he did. This was his retribution. Suddenly someone called out to Yi Yun. Yi Yun turned around and saw several people in front of him. Their leader, Qin Kaiyan ordered Liu Yu to be given medicine. Yi Yun realized that these were people from Jinglu Dian. Qin Kaiyan introduced himself and said that they were indeed from Jinglu Dian. Qin Kaiyan then demanded that Yi Yun explain to him why a disciple of inferior status cut off the hand of an older disciple. Liu Yu was given medicine and drank it, but still talked about his severed arm. The guy who gave Liu Yu the medicine informed Senior Qin Kaiyan that Liu Yu's pain had stopped. He then menacingly told Liu Yu that he should tell Qin Kaiyan's older brother. Liu Yu told Qin Kaiyan that Yi Yun had cut off his left arm and that he should definitely be discussed for such a disgusting act. Qin Kaiyan turned around and asked how it was that the younger disciple Yi Yun cut off the hand of the older disciple. Liu Yu immediately started making excuses, assuring that it was a surprise attack and he was caught off guard. Otherwise, if it was a normal fight, Yi Yun wouldn't even be able to scratch him. But Qin Kaiyan didn't believe Liu Yu had ripped it off. Liu Yu tried to convince Qin Kaiyan that he was the victim here. Liu Yu looked sadly at his armless shoulder again and said that now he was just a pathetic invalid. Yi Yun started shouting at Liu Yu to stop acting so pathetic and asking where this bloodlust came from in the first place. Qin Kaiyan addressed Yi South, informing him that he was sentencing him to death. Yi Yun was just shocked by such news and did not know how to react to it and what to say. He just grabbed his head with his hands. Liu Yu started thanking Qin Kaiyan, saying that he was the most honest and most just person. But Qin Kaiyan called him a retard and said that Liu Yu was only shaming them, the outer disciples, and then added that he would definitely deal with him when they returned to their own. Yi Yun was on his knees and was about to be executed immediately. When the sword was already swung at him, he suddenly opposed it. The man who was supposed to carry out the immediate execution informed Qin Kaiyan that Yi Yun was protesting against his execution. But Qin Kaiyan still demanded execution for Yi Yun. Then Yi Yun showed them the book with the law of the heavenly sword and said that no one would dare to go against the law of the heavenly sword. Qin Kaiyan approached Yi South and asked him why he was carrying the law with him and why he was questioning his judgment. Yi Yun began to read the heavenly sword law book. He read that if this is not a challenge, then no one can use a spiritual weapon. Therefore, according to the heavenly sword law, Liu Yu should also be executed immediately. Qin Kaiyan got angry. Yi Yun took a sword and put it to his neck, saying that he could be executed immediately. But he believes that the book of laws will be fair and will return him. And Liu Yu also committed a crime, which means he must certainly be executed. But the person who was supposed to execute Yi Yun was in no hurry to do so. Then Yi Yun asked him why he was so excited. The man looked at Qin Kaiyan and asked what he should do with Yi Yun now. Another man said that Qin Kaiyan could not execute Yi Yun, because if it reached the elder brother's ear, then it would be very bad for them all. Qin Kai Han was indignant because he was beaten by some disciple from the lower level. Then Qin Kai Han said that Yi Yun could stay alive. Then Qin Kai Han looked at Liu Yu and said that it turns out it was a challenge and there were no surprise attacks, as Liu Yu told him, at all. He looked at Liu Yu with disbelief and asked if he agreed with this. Liu Yu again began to get confused to justify himself, assuring that he had a very bad memory. Qin Kai Han once again asked Liu Yu if it was a challenge. Then Liu Yu admitted everything and stopped denying anything. Qin Kai Han said that back then it was within reason to use a spiritual weapon, but still completely unfair. Yi Yun was doing some business of his own at that time, and the one who was supposed to execute him asked how he dared not listen at all when the elder Qin Kai Han was talking. Yi Yun got angry and shouted that the law says that the judgment is not fair, and there is no other way out for him, a junior disciple. Everyone from Jing Ludian looked at Yi Yun with surprise. Qin Kai Han shouted that his judgment was the most just and Yi Yun did not dare to doubt him. Then Yi Yun said that if it was a challenge, then he and Liu Yu could continue the fight and leave their fates to heaven. Liu Yu said that he had just received a serious injury, so he would not be able to fight him. Then Qin Kai Han said he agreed. Liu Yu was startled by this. He stood and looked at the elder Qin Kai Han with incomprehension. Yi Yun looked at his enemy with a smile and said he was going to cut off his other arm too. Qin Kai Han said that in order for everything to be fair, Liu Yu must first regain his spiritual power. Qin Kai Han turned to Liu Yu and said that before the fight began, he should make the most of his free time. Liu Yu laughed, because he understood perfectly well that the words of the elder Qin Kai Han always had no meaning. Liu Yu sat down and began to meditate to regain his spiritual power. Then Yi Yun began to worry a little, because it would obviously not be good for him if he allowed Liu Yu to regain his spiritual power. After all, in this case, Liu Yu will be able to control the spiritual weapon and defeat it with a single blow. Yi Yun looked at the insidiously smiling Qin Kai Han and realized that he was clearly trying to help Liu Yu win this fight. They were all in league against Yi Yun. Finally, some time passed and Liu Yu finished meditating and completely recovered his spiritual energy. He informed Senior Qin Kai Han about this and said he was ready for battle. Qin Kai Han said that now is the time to continue the battle of Yi Yun and Liu Yu. Before the start of the battle, Qin Kai Han said that no one would be responsible for the injuries or deaths of the participants received during this battle. Yi Yun was furious. He understood that if it wasn't for this Qin Kai Han, Liu Yu would have been dead long ago. But Liu Yu said that Qin Kai Han was not to blame for anything. It was just that Yi Yun was not very lucky. As soon as the fight started, Liu Yu decided to immediately use the black sword and attack his opponent. Yi Yun did not immediately understand what it was and he was wounded in the arm and bled. Yi Yun held onto his injured shoulder and looked at his enemy. Liu Yu said that he underestimated Yi Yun, because his spiritual energy is really quite strong. But then he added that Yi Yun can't do anything against spiritual weapons. He explained that his sword contained all of his spiritual energy, so Yi Yun simply wouldn't be able to handle it. Then Liu Yu shouted that it was his revenge on Yi Yun for the severed hand and attacked Yi Yun. Yi Yun was well aware that his enemy would do anything to kill him and win this battle. He was well aware that the spiritual power in the sword is very strong and it will not be easy for him to cope with it. Yi Yun had never fought with a spiritual weapon before. He didn't know if he would be able to defend against its attack. But then Yi Yun thought that he would definitely be able to defend himself, because he has the very people who gave him the magic glowing ball. Yi Yun decided that he could enter the purification stage in just an instant. He assured himself that he simply had nothing to fear, because it was just an inferior spiritual weapon. Yi Yun shouted that he would chop Liu Yu into a bunch of small pieces and become a nightmare for him. Qin Kai Han noticed that Yi Yun was using the high flood dragon technique. Everyone from Jing Ludian started laughing at the fact that Yi Yun decided to use a lower martial art against a spiritual weapon. They did not know what Yi Yun wanted to show by this. Liu Yu said that Yi Yun is definitely crazy for doing this. But Yi Yun wasn't listening to anyone and wasn't going to stop. He just kept doing as he wanted. Suddenly, Qin Kai Han shouted that everyone should be careful, because Yi Yun's spiritual weapon was going to take revenge on them. Everyone was completely at a loss. They didn't understand what was going on. Liu Yu suddenly flew to the side due to some very powerful blow. Liu Yu hit a tree and fell. He lay completely exhausted and plaintively asked Qin Kai Han for help. But Qin Kai Han only looked at what was happening with surprise and could not understand how a simple descendant disciple had such a powerful force that could break even a spiritual weapon. Suddenly, Qin Kai Han heard Yi Yun calling him behind his back. Yi Yun took a swing at Qin Kai Han and asked him what he had said about the fact that no one was responsible for anything. But he didn't hit Qin Kai Han. He just said that he was very hungry, so much so that he was even ready to eat a huge horse right now. Yi-yun stood and thought that it was very interesting to find out if he would be fed in the dining room. Suddenly, when he was about to leave, he was blocked by other people from Jinglu Dian. They asked him where he was going so fast. Yi-yun then turned around and asked if Qin Kyan-han wanted to take back his words. Qin Kyan-han told his people to leave Yi-yun. Qin Kyan-han then told Yi-yun that he was too loyal, so he wouldn't punish him, he wouldn't break his promise, which is why he was going to just expel Yi-yun from the Heavenly Sword clan. Suddenly, a voice was heard from behind, who objected, saying that such a decision was unfair. Everyone turned around. It was the voice of Shenmo, who had just woken up. Yi-yun was very happy that Shenmo had finally come to his senses. Shenmo said he saw others taking the spirit stones, and Yi-yun was just defending himself. Shenmo shouted that Qin Kyan-han wasn't the only one watching from the sidelines, so he asked if it was logical to punish Yi-yun's older brother. Yi-yun raised his hands up and turned to Shenmo, telling him not to come any closer, as it was too dangerous here. Yi-yun came closer to Shenmo and said that Shenmo had always been a great friend to him and he was very glad that he had met him once. Yi-yun said that Shenmo should continue to improve, and then turned to Qin Kyan-han and asked what would happen if he did not want to leave the Heavenly Sword clan. Qin Kyan-han replied that if Yi-yun did not leave the Heavenly Sword clan by himself, he would be forced to do so by force. Yi-yun looked at Qin Kyan-han and thought that he had a second degree, so apparently Yi-yun would die here. Suddenly, two beautiful young girls appeared. One of them said that Qin Kyan-han had killed a lot of innocent people and that he was causing problems. Another girl said that Qin Kyan-han had become just a walking nuisance for the elder sister. Yi-yun looked at these beautiful girls and thought that they just looked great. Qin Kyan-han stood and looked at the girls. One of the girls froze his legs and he couldn't move. He asked them what they were doing here and they started asking together for Qin Kyan-han to let Yi-yun go. Qin Kyan-han said that he carried out his actions strictly following all the rules, and the girls told him that it was a sin to harm the students. One of the girls said that Qin Kyan-han could not claim that he was really fair, because she saw everything with her own eyes. Qin Kyan-han was surprised that the girls could actually see everything that was happening. He did not understand why he could not sense their presence. Another girl said that Qin Kyan-han should do as he is told and should not contradict. Then Qin Kyan-han asked what would happen to him if he didn't. The girl who shackled his legs asked if he would dare to disobey her. The other girl was mimicking Qin Kyan-han at this time. Qin Kyan-han agreed, but said to save his face, he ordered Liu Yu to be picked up and taken away from here. Liu Yu asked Qin Kyan-han what they should do now, but Qin Kyan-han did not answer him. He turned to Yi-yun and said that he would certainly take revenge on him for everything. But one of the girls, Linner, told Qin Kyan-han to finally calm down and not anger her, otherwise it might end badly. Linner said that one day Qin Kyan-han would definitely be kicked out of Zhonghua Temple. Another girl tried to calm her down. Yi-yun fell on his knees in front of the girl and said that he was alive only because of her. He asked how he could thank her. The girl said that there was absolutely no need for gratitude and asked him to get up. Linner asked how he wanted to settle down, then Yi-yun offered to pay himself. For this, Linear slapped him in the face and called him a pervert. Yi-yun hastened to justify himself and said that he just wanted to make a joke and you shouldn't take his words so seriously. He said that he had already suffered, and she also hit him. Linear only replied that he was to blame for everything. Another girl asked if Yi-yun understood that one day Qin Kyan-han would take revenge on him anyway. Then Yi-yun clung to the savior's leg and asked her not to leave him here alone, because he didn't even have a girlfriend yet. Linner began to be indignant and demanded that Yi-yun immediately let the girl go. She tried to pull him away, but he stubbornly resisted and asked the girl to save him from Linear. Then the savior said that she had a plan that would save Yi-yun's life. Yi-yun made himself comfortable and started asking what the plan was. The savior patted him on the head and with a gentle smile told him to train more. Yi-yun was shocked. While he was sitting and thinking, the girls had almost left. He shouted after his heroine not to leave, because he thinks that her plan will not work. Then both girls disappeared into thin air in an instant. Yi-yun raised his head to the sky and shouted that he didn't even know the name of his savior, but she didn't hear him anymore. Linner said that the savior had raised Yi-yun's healing level, but Qin Kyan-han had hit him before it happened. The girl replied that this was not the case at all. Linner was surprised. She said that even if Yi-yun is very strong, an ordinary disciple will still never be compared to Qin Kyan-han. The savior said that she felt a very strong spirit in Yi-yun. She said that he was probably special. Linner said it was unbelievable that a jerk like Yi-yun could be so talented. Then the savior replied that Yun is not the only one, there are still special ones. Linear was very surprised and asked who else. At this time, Yun was walking upset that the girls had just left him. Shenmo ran after him and shouted that he was very glad that he was alright. Yun turned around and said that 2 beautiful girls had just left, so he just couldn't be okay. But Shenmo said that Yun is happy right now. Shenmo burst into tears and hugged Yun. Yun pulled back and said that this time it wasn't him who saved Shenmo, but Shenmo who saved him. Shenmo said that Yun had already saved him once and therefore he would always be in his debt. Yun took Shenmo's hands and said that he was his friend. That's why Yun gave Shenmo a mid-level spiritual stone. But Shenmo refused such a gift. He said that one such stone is equal to 100 ordinary stones, so he simply cannot take it for himself. Yun got angry at Shenmo and shouted that if he told him to take this stone for himself, then he should take it. But Shenmo still didn't want to take the stone. Suddenly, the stone began to move towards him by itself and Yun asked how then the stone moves by itself if Shenmo does not want it. Shenmo didn't understand it either. This spirit was nourished by Shenmo.